In the distant reaches of the galaxy, a group of alien races known for their strength and cruelty formed an alliance. Their goal was clear: dominate weaker species and expand their empire. These aliens had conquered countless worlds using fear and advanced technology to crush any resistance. They believed no species could stand against them. Humanity, however, had a different idea. In a far-off corner of the galaxy on a planet known for its rich resources, humanity had built a thriving colony. The planet was valuable, and the aliens had their eyes set on it. Word came through the galactic channels. The aliens were coming, and they would not show mercy. But the humans weren't afraid. Instead, they were preparing in ways the aliens couldn't imagine. A sense of calm spread among the human military leaders, and their soldiers took their positions. They looked ready for battle, but something was different. The humans, known for their resourcefulness and fierce independence, were not showing the usual signs of panic or fear. Instead, they stood still. The soldiers and commanders, typically alert, now appeared almost lifeless like statues. The sight confused the aliens who had been told about humanity's reputation. They had heard stories of humans standing firm in the face of danger, but now they saw something entirely different. On the surface, it seemed like the humans were paralyzed, frozen in fear. It was an unexpected sight, and the aliens began to think they had won before the battle even began. They believed the humans were too weak to fight back. The aliens, smug in their victory, assumed that their advanced technology and overwhelming numbers would be more than enough to defeat the human forces. As the alien fleet moved closer to the planet, a sense of confidence washed over the invaders. They had already begun to celebrate their victory in their minds. However, the humans were not in a panic. Instead, they were silent, deadly silent. In one of the hidden underground bunkers, Commander Lyle, a seasoned veteran of many battles, stood among his officers. He stared at the screens in front of him, his face expressionless. He was not afraid. He had a plan. His eyes met Sarah's, his trusted ally and a brilliant strategist. She nodded, her calm demeanor matching his own. Together, they knew what was coming. The rest of the world didn't know yet, but they had already prepared. They had worked for years to develop a plan that would make the alien forces underestimate them, to make them believe that they were helpless. While the aliens thought the humans were powerless, the humans were silently setting the trap. Lyle and Sarah watched the alien fleet approach, their ships filling the sky like dark, menacing clouds. It was a terrifying sight, but there was no panic in their eyes, only cold, calculated focus. They had trained their forces for this exact moment. They had prepared everything to lure the aliens into a trap they could never escape from. On the surface, everything appeared calm, but below the human military was moving into action. The soldiers, who appeared frozen in fear, were in fact waiting for the perfect moment. They had already activated their most secret weapon, electromagnetic devices that could disable alien technology. All they had to do was wait for the aliens to make the first move. The aliens, on the other hand, continued to advance, their arrogance blinding them to the humans' true intentions. They thought the humans were finished. It was a mistake the aliens would soon regret. Meanwhile, in the human command center, a calm voice echoed over the communication system. "Prepare the traps. It's time." It was Sarah, the strategist, giving the order to activate the hidden defenses. The soldiers, still motionless to the alien eye, were ready. The humans had been waiting for this very moment, and now it was time to strike. The first wave of aliens landed on the planet's surface. Their massive ships touched down with a loud rumble, shaking the ground beneath them. But as the alien soldiers began to disembark, they were met with no resistance. The humans remained silent, still, and seemingly helpless. The aliens began to laugh, thinking that the humans were no longer a threat. They walked forward, expecting to find only weak, terrified civilians. But they were wrong. As the aliens moved deeper into the human colony, they began to encounter strange obstacles. Their communication systems started to malfunction. Ships that were meant to be their support suddenly turned off, leaving the soldiers stranded. One by one, alien weapons began to lose power. The soldiers grew confused. Some tried to call for backup, but their radios were dead. The trap had been set. Lyle and Sarah watched as the first wave of aliens was cut off from their fleet. The electromagnetic pulses had successfully disabled their weapons and communications. The humans had fooled them all. The aliens were now in the middle of a deadly ambush. The human soldiers, who had remained silent and motionless, now sprang into action. They came from every direction, attacking with a ferocity that stunned the invaders. The first group of aliens, unable to defend themselves, were quickly overwhelmed. The humans had prepared for this moment for years. Their patience had paid off. Back on the command ship, Sarah's fingers moved swiftly over the control panel. She had anticipated every move the aliens would make. The trap was closing in, and there was no way out for the invaders. The humans were no longer the victims. They were the hunters. As the chaos spread among the alien forces, Lyle looked out. Over the battlefield, he knew this was only the beginning. The aliens had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now they would pay the price. The humans hadn't frozen in fear. They had been setting the trap all along. The aliens had fallen into it, and there was no escape. As the first wave of alien soldiers began to spread out across the human colony, they felt a strange sense of triumph. Their fleet had landed without resistance, and the humans seemed to have surrendered without a fight. The aliens, confident in their superiority, believed they had broken the human spirit. They assumed that the humans had given up, frozen in fear as their soldiers had been paralyzed. But the truth was far from what the aliens thought. Far below the surface, the human leaders were fully in control. Commander Lyle, Sarah, and the rest of the human officers had worked long and hard to create the perfect trap. Now that the aliens were on the planet, they were more vulnerable than ever. Lyle paced back and forth in the underground command center. The screens in front of him showed images of the alien forces scattered throughout the colony. Some were searching for supplies, others were securing positions. But none of them seemed to realize they were walking straight into a well-planned ambush. "They're playing right into our hands," Sarah said, her voice calm and measured. She was sitting at a control panel, watching the alien movements on her screen. The humans had taken down the alien communication systems, and the invaders had no way of calling for backup or coordinating their efforts. Every move they made was now part of the plan. Lyle glanced at her and nodded. "It's time," he said. He knew the next step was critical. Aliens had no idea what was coming. Back in the colony, the human soldiers, still appearing frozen, silently activated their hidden weapons. They had been waiting for this moment. Every human soldier was now connected to a vast, underground network that allowed them to control the electromagnetic pulses that had already begun disabling the alien equipment. The soldiers were not panicking. They were ready for what was about to unfold. The first major sign that the trap was working came when a group of alien soldiers moved too far from their main fleet. They had been ordered to clear the area and secure it for the incoming reinforcements, but they quickly found themselves surrounded by nothing but empty buildings. They stopped and looked around, confused. Suddenly, a loud crackle erupted from their communication devices. "This is command. Report," one of the alien soldiers shouted, but there was no response. His radio was dead. The other soldiers tried their radios too, but they too were silent. Something was wrong. They could feel it now. Something was out of place. Before they could react, the human soldiers launched their first strike. Hidden sniper positions activated, and the sharp crack of gunfire echoed through the streets. Alien soldiers dropped to the ground, unable to react in time. The humans had set up their weapons to target the alien weak points, and the attack was swift and precise. The aliens had no idea where the shots were coming from, and their attempts to retaliate were futile. Meanwhile, Lyle and Sarah watched the operation unfold from the underground command center. The silence in the room was deafening as they observed the chaos above ground. Lyle's eyes were fixed on the screen as the aliens' confusion turned to panic. "They're not even putting up a fight," Sarah said quietly, almost as if to herself. "Because they don't realize it's over," Lyle responded. "And they won't until it's too late." Back on the streets of the colony, the alien soldiers were beginning to realize the truth. Their communications were still down, and they had lost contact with their commanders. They tried to regroup, But the more they moved, the more they fell into the trap. Each new step they took led them deeper into the killing zone. Every building they thought was safe now hid another deadly surprise. One alien soldier, frantic and disoriented, stumbled into a building, seeking cover. The moment he entered, the door slammed shut behind him. He tried to open it, but it was locked. Panic set in. Inside the building, the lights flickered, and he could hear the sound of something moving in the dark. His heart raced, but he wasn't alone. Suddenly, a human soldier emerged from the shadows, his face hidden under a dark helmet. The soldier's movements were smooth, practiced, his weapon raised with deadly precision. The alien soldier barely had time to react before he was knocked unconscious and dragged away. The alien forces were now officially in chaos. The humans, who had appeared paralyzed and helpless, were everywhere. They moved with quiet efficiency, taking out enemy forces without a sound. The aliens couldn't understand how the humans were doing it. They had no idea that every part of the colony had been turned into a trap, as the alien commanders tried to reorganize their forces. They found themselves facing a new kind of enemy, humans who had turned their weakness into a weapon. The aliens had believed that the humans would cower and surrender. They had thought that the sight of their overwhelming force would crush human morale. But instead, the humans had used that very expectation against them. Lyle's voice echoed through the underground base as he gave the order for the next phase of the operation. Now, we push them back. Human forces who had been waiting and hiding now emerged in full force, attacking the alien positions from all sides. Their movements were quick, and their aim was deadly. The first wave of alien soldiers isolated from their fleet was wiped out within minutes. The humans were using their environment to their advantage. The narrow streets and dense buildings were perfect for guerrilla warfare, where the humans could strike fast and retreat before the aliens could even react. Each ambush pushed the aliens further into disarray, making it harder for them to regroup. By now, the aliens knew they were in trouble, but it was too late. The human forces, who had once appeared frozen in fear, had taken control of the situation. The aliens were now the ones trapped. The fear they had hoped to instill in the humans was now the very thing that had led them to their defeat. Sarah watched the chaos on her screen, a slight smile crossing her face. They never stood a chance. Commander Lyle, standing beside her, nodded. We've got them exactly where we want them. The alien fleet had been certain. They were sure that humanity, despite its reputation, would freeze in fear and surrender to their overwhelming might. But as the alien soldiers stumbled further into the deadly trap, they realized they had miscalculated. Every alien soldier who ventured deeper into the human colony seemed to vanish, overwhelmed by invisible forces. The humans had planned for this moment, and now, with every step, the aliens were being drawn into a perfect ambush. The streets that had once seemed quiet and abandoned now buzzed with hidden human activity. Aliens moved cautiously, looking for the enemy they thought was too afraid to fight. They were walking right into the trap. They had underestimated human intelligence and cunning, assuming that their numbers and technology would easily crush the humans. But the humans had one advantage the aliens never considered: patience. They had been planning for this for years. Every building, every street corner, every piece of technology in the colony had been turned into a potential weapon. And the aliens had no idea. In one part of the colony, a squad of alien soldiers moved through a narrow alley, scanning every shadow. They thought they were being careful, aware that the humans were clever, but they didn't know how clever. Suddenly, a loud worry sound filled the air. Before they could react, a series of metal doors slammed shut, trapping them in the alley. The aliens immediately tried to force their way out, but the doors were reinforced with human-made technology. The trap had sprung from the shadows. Human soldiers appeared, moving quickly and silently. Their weapons were precise, taking out the alien soldiers before they even had time to fire a shot. The aliens tried to call for help, but their communications were still down. They were surrounded, and there was nowhere to run. Meanwhile, Commander Lyle and Sarah watched from their underground command center, monitoring the operation through a network of hidden cameras and sensors. They could see everything. The alien, Soldiers who had once thought the humans were defeated were now the ones defeated. The tide had turned. The humans had lured the aliens into the perfect position, and now they were closing in for the final strike. "They're trapped," Sarah said quietly, her fingers dancing over the control panel. She had been with Lyle from the start, and every move the humans made was part of the plan they had crafted together. They had expected resistance, but this was even better than they had hoped. The aliens were panicking, and that made them dangerous, but it also made them easier to defeat. Lyle's voice was steady. "Hold back the final attack for now. We need them to think they still have a chance. We'll let them get close." The humans were playing a dangerous game. They needed the aliens to think they were winning. They needed them to believe the humans were still reeling from the initial attack. Only then could they deliver the final blow. Lyle had always believed that the best way to defeat an enemy was to make them feel invincible. Just before they were crushed, outside, the alien soldiers were becoming increasingly disoriented. They had been isolated from their main fleet. Their weapons and technology were failing, and now their comrades were disappearing, one by one. Panic began to spread among them. Some tried to regroup, but their efforts were futile. They couldn't escape the trap they had walked into. One alien officer, a commanding figure among his troops, raised his voice in desperation. "Get back to the ships, now," he shouted. "We need to rejoin the fleet and call for reinforcements. The humans are playing with us." But the call for reinforcements never came. The aliens' communication lines were still cut off. The humans had anticipated every move. As the alien officer attempted to rally his soldiers, a blast from a hidden human weapon tore through the air, silencing him and sending his forces into a panicked retreat. The remaining aliens scrambled for cover, trying to fight back, but their weapons were useless. The humans were everywhere, and their attacks were swift and deadly. Alien soldiers fell one after another, unable to hold their ground. Lyle watched the scene unfold on the screen, his mind working quickly. He knew the aliens were running out of time. "Sarah," he said, turning to her. "It's time to finish this." Sarah nodded, her eyes focused on the display. With a few swift keystrokes, she activated the final phase of the plan. Hidden drones, equipped with EMP devices, flew into position. They would disable the remaining alien tech and leave the invaders helpless. The drones moved quickly, weaving through the chaos, taking out key alien equipment with precision. Outside, the human forces began to move in for the final assault. No more hiding, no more waiting. This was it. The alien soldiers, now disorganized and frightened, could barely hold their ground. The humans were closing in on them from every direction. One by one, the last pockets of alien resistance were wiped out. The humans had played their cards perfectly. The alien soldiers, who had once thought they were invincible, were now on the run, defeated by their own arrogance and the cunning of the human forces. By the time the alien fleet realized what had happened, it was too late. The remaining alien ships, scattered and disorganized, attempted to retreat, but the humans had anticipated this too. They had set up hidden energy fields that disabled the alien ship's engines. The alien fleet was now trapped in the sky. Unable to escape, the humans had won. The aliens had been defeated, and it all happened so quickly that the invaders had never even seen it coming. Back in the command center, Lyle and Sarah exchanged a look. They had done it. The trap had worked better than they could have hoped. The humans had not only survived, but they had turned the tables on their enemies, showing the galaxy just how dangerous they could be when underestimated. "We did it," Sarah said, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Lyle nodded. "And we'll be ready if they come back." The aliens had finally realized their mistake, but by the time the truth hit them, it was too late. The trap that the humans had set was closing in on them with unstoppable force. The invaders were losing control, their weapons useless, and their numbers dwindling with every passing minute. One by one, the alien soldiers who had once walked confidently through the streets of the human colony were falling. The humans had turned the battlefield into a maze of confusion and chaos. Each street corner, each abandoned building, hid more deadly surprises. It was a game the aliens hadn't even known they were playing. And now, they were losing badly. Commander Lyle and Sarah watched from the underground command center. Their eyes flickered over the monitors, tracking the movements of the alien forces. The humans were still pushing forward, their attacks becoming more relentless as they cornered the last of the alien soldiers. "They're scrambling," Sarah said, her voice cool, but there was a hint of satisfaction in it. They didn't expect this. Lyle's face remained serious, though his thoughts matched Sarah's. The aliens had been overconfident, thinking they could crush humanity without effort. But now, with their communication systems down and their technology failing, they were completely outmatched. The humans had used their enemy's arrogance to create an ambush so precise that the alien fleet had no way of escaping. "We need to make sure we don't let them regroup," Lyle replied. "Push them until they break." He was right. The aliens were close to panic now, and a retreat would only give them a chance to reorganize. The humans had to press their advantage. On the surface, the remaining alien soldiers were beginning to show signs of panic. Their once formidable forces were scattered and disoriented. Some tried to form defensive positions, but the humans were too fast and too clever. Every time the aliens thought they had a moment to catch their breath, a new wave of human soldiers appeared, attacking from another angle. In one area of the colony, a group of alien soldiers was pinned down in a ruined building. They fired their weapons wildly, but their shots went wide, hitting nothing but empty air. The humans were moving too fast, appearing from the shadows and disappearing again before the aliens could react. The soldiers were trapped, their once proud weapons rendered useless against the speed and tactics of the human forces. "Get them out of there," one alien commander shouted, watching as his soldiers fought a losing battle. But once again, there was no response. His command was met with silence. The human soldiers had cut off all communication between the alien forces, isolating them from any hope of reinforcements. Meanwhile, Lyle and Sarah coordinated the final stage of the plan. The last alien forces were now completely surrounded. The electromagnetic pulses that had disabled their technology were still active, leaving the invaders vulnerable. But the humans hadn't just disabled their weapons, they had also set up traps in key locations, making it nearly impossible for the aliens to escape. "We're almost there," Lyle said, his voice calm but determined. "Let's finish this." On the streets of the colony, the human soldiers pushed forward with the confidence of warriors who knew victory was within their grasp. The last pockets of alien resistance were being wiped out, one group at a time. The aliens, realizing their defeat was inevitable, tried to retreat, but the humans were too quick. They had predicted this move, and they had planned for it. An alien officer, one of the last remaining leaders, ordered his remaining troops to fall back to the main fleet. The alien ships in orbit were still there, waiting. But when the officer tried to make contact with the fleet, he found that his communications had been cut off completely. There would be no escape. His only choice now was to fight to the end. But the humans weren't about to give him that chance. Lyle had already anticipated this final act of desperation. With a few quick orders, he activated the last phase of the trap. Drones equipped with disabling EMP devices were launched into the sky, flying straight toward the alien fleet. Were the final key to cutting off the last escape route for the invaders. As the drones neared the alien ships, a strange calm settled over the battlefield. The aliens, realizing they had nowhere to go, began to retreat into their last few defensive positions, but it was futile. The drones completed their task, and with a sudden burst of energy, the alien fleet's engines sputtered and died. Invaders were stranded in the sky, their ships powerless and unable to move. The humans had one. Back in the command center, Sarah let out a quiet sigh of relief. She had always believed in this plan, but seeing it unfold in front of her was still a victory beyond her expectations. The aliens had been so sure of their dominance, so confident that humanity was weak, and now they were trapped, their technology disabled, their soldiers surrounded and defeated. "We've done it," Sarah said, her voice tinged with pride. "They didn't stand a chance." Lyle didn't immediately respond. His eyes were still fixed on the screens, watching as the last of the alien forces surrendered. He knew this wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about sending a message. Humanity had been underestimated, not just by the aliens, but by the entire galaxy. Today, that message was loud and clear. We've sent them a message, Lyle finally said, turning to Sarah, and the galaxy will hear it. As the last of the alien forces were rounded up and taken into custody, the humans began to clean up the battlefield. The colony was saved, and the threat of the alien invasion had been eliminated. But the cost had been high. Though the battle was over, the war was far from finished. The humans had proven their strength, but they also knew that this victory was only the beginning. There would be other threats. There would be more battles to fight. They could finally rest, knowing that they had outsmarted their enemies and shown the galaxy that humanity was not a force to be underestimated. The final moments of the battle unfolded quickly. The alien forces, once so confident in their victory, were now struggling to hold on. What had started as an overwhelming invasion had turned into a nightmare. The humans had proven far more dangerous than anyone had expected. It turned the tables, using cunning and patience to outmaneuver their enemies at every step. In the streets of the colony, the last remaining pockets of alien soldiers were trapped. They had nowhere to run, no way to contact their fleet, and no way to fight back. They were isolated, surrounded by the human forces they had once believed they could easily crush. One of the alien commanders, a tall figure with jagged armor, stood in the middle of what was once a bustling street. His weapons were useless. His radio silent. He stared up at the sky, watching as the remaining alien ships in orbit sat motionless, their engines dead, unable to flee. The reality of the situation began to sink in. They were trapped, and it was all their fault. "Get me a way out of here," the commander shouted, but his voice was filled with desperation. His soldiers were in no better shape. They had lost control, and now panic had set in. The aliens who had once believed they were the galaxy's most powerful force now felt helpless, like prey being hunted. The human soldiers, however, remained calm. They had been through worse, and now they were on the offensive. As the aliens scrambled, the humans closed in. The alien commander, realizing his forces had been completely surrounded, turned to his remaining troops. "We fight? We cannot lose here. The fleet will come for us," he shouted, trying to rally what little remained of his army. But the humans had anticipated every move. Their forces moved with precision, cutting off the aliens' last hope of escape. Every time an alien soldier tried to make a move, the humans were right there, appearing from the shadows, striking hard, and disappearing again before the aliens could react. It was as if the humans were everywhere at once. Commander Lyle and Sarah watched from the command center as the final push unfolded. "They're panicking," Sarah said. "They're losing their nerve." Lyle nodded. "It's over. They just don't know it yet." The alien soldiers were trying to fight back, but their movements were clumsy and their attempts to reorganize were futile. They had no leadership, no strategy, and most of their weapons were useless. The electromagnetic pulses the humans had set up had disabled all their advanced technology. The aliens had become nothing more than soldiers with no tools to fight. As Lyle spoke, a message came through on the command screen. It was a transmission from an alien officer attempting to break through the humans' communications blackout. The message was frantic, barely coherent. "We need assistance. You're under attack. Our fleet is disabled. Please respond." The voice crackled with desperation. The officer's message was met with silence. The humans had already severed all communication links with the aliens. Their plea for help went unanswered. "Too late," Sarah said, her eyes fixed on the screen. She knew the battle was over. The alien fleet, still stuck in orbit, had no way to get to their troops. Even if they could, they wouldn't be able to launch a successful counterattack. The humans had already won. On the ground, the human soldiers began to sweep through the colony, taking control of the alien soldiers one by one. The aliens, exhausted and confused, had no fight left in them. They surrendered, but it was too late for any mercy. The humans had no intention of letting them escape after the destruction they had caused. As the alien forces were rounded up, Lyle's voice came through the comms. "Secure all prisoners and make sure we've taken full control of the area. No one escapes." His orders were clear, and the soldiers moved with purpose. The last remnants of the alien army were either captured or defeated. The humans had taken the victory, and they weren't about to let it slip away. In the sky above, the last of the alien ships tried to regain power, but it was useless. The humans had already disabled their engines, trapping the ships in the atmosphere. There was no way for them to escape. The human forces had effectively captured or destroyed every single one of their invaders. As the last of the alien ships fell to the ground, Lyle allowed himself a brief moment of relief. The colony was safe. The humans had stood their ground, and against all odds, had turned the invasion into a victory. The galaxy would soon hear of this, and the message would be clear. Humanity was not a species to be taken lightly. Back in the command center, Sarah looked over at Lyle. "It's over," she said simply. Lyle nodded. "Yes, it is, but this is just the beginning." The alien forces may have been defeated, but Lyle knew that this victory would send ripples across the galaxy. Humanity had proven that it could not be easily overrun. The galaxy would now have to reckon with the human force, and that was a message they would never forget. The human forces stood victorious, and the once confident alien fleet now lay in ruins. The sounds of distant explosions still echoed across the colony, but they were the final signs of resistance. The alien ships had been disabled, their weapons useless, and their soldiers scattered or captured. The humans had turned the tide of the battle in a way no one had predicted. As the last of the alien soldiers were taken prisoner, Commander Lyle stood at the front of the command center, his eyes scanning the monitors. He could see the human forces moving through the colony, ensuring that every alien had been accounted for. The once feared invaders were now nothing more than captives, prisoners of war. The humans had proven their strength and resilience. "Think it's finally over?" Sarah said, standing beside Lyle. She looked at the screen with a sense of calm. The battle had been intense, but now the humans were in control. There was no longer any doubt. Lyle didn't respond immediately. His eyes were focused on the screen, watching as the final pockets of alien resistance were eliminated. He could hear the sounds of footsteps in the command center as soldiers moved around, preparing to secure the captured alien technology. It was a victory, but one that would require careful handling. "We'll need to make sure we don't underestimate the consequences of this," Lyle said quietly. "The galaxy won't take kindly to this defeat. We've made an enemy of a very powerful force." Sarah nodded. "But we've also sent a message. We're not the easy target they thought we were." That much was true. Humanity had been underestimated. The alien races had believed that their overwhelming strength and advanced technology would be enough to crush the human colonies. They thought the humans would freeze, unable to defend themselves against such a force. But the humans had done more than defend themselves. They had outsmarted their enemies at every turn. The trap they had set for the aliens had worked flawlessly, and now the galaxy knew that humanity was not to be taken lightly. Lyle stood up and walked to the window of the command center, looking out over the colony. The sky above was filled with the remains of the alien fleet still hanging in the atmosphere like broken ships, unable to flee. The colony had been saved. The people who had once feared for their lives now had a reason to hope. "We've won," Lyle said softly, his voice filled with both relief and resolve. "But it's only the beginning." Just as he spoke, a soldier entered the room, his face serious. "Commander, we've received a message from the Galactic Council." Lyle turned to face the soldier. "What do they want?" The soldier hesitated. For a moment, "They're demanding an explanation for what happened here. They want to know how we managed to defeat the alien fleet," Lyle sighed. It was to be expected. The Galactic Council had always treated humanity as a lesser force, a species on the fringes of the galaxy. They would want answers, and Lyle knew that they would not be satisfied with the simple truth. They would want to know how the humans had outsmarted one of the most powerful alien coalitions in the galaxy. They would want to know how the humans had won a battle they were never supposed to win. "We'll tell them the truth," Lyle said, turning back to the soldier. "We'll also make it clear that we're not going to be underestimated again. They need to understand that humanity is a force to be reckoned with." The soldier nodded and left to relay the message. As the command center settled into a quiet rhythm, Lyle and Sarah remained at the window, watching as the human forces continued their work. There was still much to be done. Captured alien technology would need to be studied, and the prisoners would need to be secured. But for now, there was a sense of victory. The humans had proved their worth. The galaxy will remember this day, Sarah said, her voice filled with a quiet pride. The aliens will know that humanity isn't afraid. They'll think twice before attacking again. Lyle turned to face her, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Earned their respect, but we've also made it clear that we won't back down. We've shown them that the cost of attacking humanity is too high." The victory was not just about saving the colony, it was about sending a message to the rest of the galaxy. Humanity had fought back against the odds and emerged victorious. It turned the tables on their invaders and shown the galaxy that they were no longer a species to be taken lightly. The alien fleet had underestimated humanity. They had assumed that the humans would freeze in fear, that their advanced technology and overwhelming numbers would guarantee their success. But they were wrong. The humans had outsmarted them at every turn, setting traps, disabling their technology, and taking control when it mattered most. Now, the alien forces were broken, their soldiers defeated, and their fleet powerless. The humans had claimed their victory, and the galaxy would never forget it. Aliens would learn from this mistake, and humanity's reputation would spread far and wide. Lyle and Sarah stood in silence, looking out over the colony. The victory was sweet, but they both knew that the war was far from over. There would be more battles to fight, more enemies to face. But for now, humanity had made their mark. They had shown the galaxy that they were strong, resilient, and capable of defeating even the most powerful invaders, and that was just the beginning.